Hey guys, it's Steve-O. I hope everything's going well with you and that you're taking care of yourselves and the ones that you love. This is somewhat of a channel intro and I should say, or a testimony light, and it's not either of those. Mainly, this is going to be as short of a video as I can make, putting context to a lot of the videos I'm going to make here because my experiences, my perspectives, and my intentions are a little bit different than most people, I believe, and I don't want to have to keep referencing things. So basically this video is going to be titled something akin to how I got here, and that is obviously what the video is going to be about. So I'm going to take a minute, I'm going to take a drink of water, collect myself, and then I'm going to start very briefly in today, the present I should say, and then I'm going to go way back and just explain a little bit of my journey with as little detail as I can, but just to put some context to things that I'm going to be talking about on this channel. And before I go into that, the reason I think it's important is specifically, I've lived a godless life for over 40 years for all intents and purposes. And I want to make content that is going to speak to me and how I was, meaning I've spent considerable time recently reflecting not on how I can be affected or influenced or provoked to thought today, but I've been thinking, you know, looking back at Steve-O when he was 10, 13, 16, 19, whatever, so on and so forth, what could have maybe got through to me. And so that is, again, I'm going to try to speak to people. What I'm saying in my head, and I don't know if this is right, but I want to start talking about God with the godless. So some of the things I say, some of the ways I approach things may seem blasphemous, heretical, or like I'm missing the theological point. And yes, now the point in that is, if you're a avid practicing believer or someone who does not have issues with faith, some of this may not speak to you now. But again, what this may provide is context from either my, I don't want to say insights, but when I start to talk about things a lot of people are not comfortable talking about, I'm hoping if you encounter someone like me, you'll have tools to speak to me, because for I hadn't heard the gospel until in my 40s. And if someone would have approached me at different times of my life, I would not have been receptive. It's very convoluted, but I want to provide people with ways to not shut people down to Christianity. And I'll share some things about how my experience and how I got here. Now, the last part of the now is I'm 42 years old and I've been a Christian for less than a year. I've been confrontational or not believing in Christianity for the majority of my life. Now, I will sometimes refer to myself as the world's worst Christian, and I mean that tongue-in-cheek, but also somewhat from a position of humility, meaning I don't think I'm better than older Christians. I don't think I'm better than newer Christians. I don't think I'm better than new believers. I'm learning. A lot of this stuff is me finally expressing myself and hoping to get feedback from people and get them to share their positions, because I don't have my social circle is me with a period in the center. So I'm looking to always get feedback, to test myself, to externalize my thoughts, put them out there to be criticized, critiqued, or complimented, maybe, whatever. So that's where I am today. Now I'm going to take another pause, I'm going to take another drink, refocus, and again, I'm going to try to do this in as short of a way as possible, but this is going back pretty deep. So the last thing I'm going to say is, they have a term, resting B-word face, that I don't like, meaning there's some people who look angry at certain times. I have thinking angry face, meaning the deeper, there's a beautiful blue jay right there. The deeper I think the angrier I look. And it throws people off very often because they may say something that provokes my thought and I'm excited about it, and I make a thinking face where I look angry and they're like, oh, what did I say? I'm sorry. And like, no, it's not that. So if you see me with that, understand that. And additionally, this stuff is hard for me to think back on. There's another, there's a cardinal over there. And I don't mean emotionally. Man, I want to get my camera out. I know as soon as I do, I'm going to scare this blue jay away. He's less than 15 feet away playing in the water. So when I say it's hard for me, not emotionally, it's physically. A lot of the stuff I don't remember well, I haven't thought about. And because what I went through is hard at certain points, or what I was going through at the time was hard, I don't retain a lot of it. So I have to think back to these things. And again, so be patient with me with that. But again, I just don't want you to think it's where I'm super hurt. Some things are hurtful to go through, but it will probably look and appear worse than it is because of just the way I do that, the way I express and think back. So I just wanted to kind of preempt that. So when I make those faces, again, don't think it's hurtful hard. It's just, it's hard as in trying to recall something you just haven't gone back to in years. It's just kind of, you start to, the trail, you start at some place and then go back and maybe, oh yeah, I forgot this part and that. So you may see some of that, and I apologize for it. So I'm going to start in the middle for one moment, but this is important for context. Most, you'll hear me say things like normal, things like that. I don't mean them negatively. It's more just for simplicity of this conversation. I don't mean it as negative or as a pejorative, but most normal people had their formative years in early childhood, and I only had a snippet of that because for lack of better terms, I was not raised right, and some of that will come out in a bit. My formative years, for all intents and purposes, were when I was 21, 22, and went away to boot camp, and that was where I learned to process relationships, emotions, things like that. And up until that point, I was more or less just coasting through life with no guidance, no discipline, no direction. And it wasn't much better after the Marines, and I'll get there. But my point being, that was the first thing that set me on a path to something other than complete hedonistic desire for myself and only caring about myself. So I don't mean this negatively. So if anyone sees this and this offends them, I'm not saying this negatively because I know about forgiveness and I've forgiven the person I'm going to speak to. But if you don't know that, this may sound like I'm bashing them, and I'm not. I love them and forgive them. My father was not the best to me growing up. I was not around my father very much. I didn't have a father figure. My mother was, for all intents and purposes, most people view her as a saint, and they're not wrong, but she was also just limited in her capacity, because even she told me something akin to, if not directly, she said, I love you, but I'm not a man, and I can't, a woman, a mother can't raise a boy to be a man. That's something a father or a man can do. She did her best, but now this is where it gets uncomfortable. And again, as I say, I love my mom, I love my father, I've forgiven my father, and I'm forgiven my mother for what I'm about to talk about. And it's hard for me, and it would be hard for people who, if they know my mom, for them to hear this. And it took a long time for me to realize how deep this was. My biggest issue today is not knowing how to trust completely and unconditionally, and that includes God. I don't know how to do that, and I struggle with that. The reason is my father taught me the opposite of trust. You'll see that. For a long time, I didn't understand why I had some subconscious resentment, maybe. I don't even know if that's the right term, but a negative thing in me about my mom. And again, love her to death unconditionally. She didn't do anything wrong. But what she did is, in her, just as an example, this is where it gets convoluted, because I can't say what she was doing is wrong. I'm saying what I had wasn't the wherewithal and the mental place to understand what was going on. But she, again, so think, I adore my mom. I don't know if I loved my father at that time. So when something would happen and my mom would say, it's going to be okay, your father will not do that, it'll stop, this is the last time, it will be okay, and it wasn't. That started to make me subconsciously not have faith in my mom, where I would trust her word, but again, it was conditionally. and I'll get more to that, but just for that context. Things were bad, and when they got bad, I would always be reassured by my mom that this is the last time, it was okay, and it never was. And it's the subconscious aspect. Like I say, her doing that and instilling it in me, it's not something that manifested consciously. My father is a more blatant example, but now I'm getting kind of ahead of myself. So that's all my early years, but I'm still there. This is, to me, the most important aspect. Maybe it's right there with my parent situation, but I don't know if many of you know what Roman Catholicism is. Now, I mentioned I have not heard the gospel until, I'm going to say, this year. Maybe because it's halfway through the year, it may have been like late last year, but I'm going to say within a year, I have heard the gospel. But I went to Roman Catholic Church. Now, I don't know how much things have changed, because I know churches have changed a little bit, but I don't know if Roman Catholicism has changed. I'm going to oversimplify this, but this is in essence what I was taught. And again, really think about the fact that as a kid, when you're impressionable, again, what were my original formative years? This is what set, my only direction in life was this. I remember going to church as somewhere between 4 and 8. And I remember hearing that I'm a sinner. Everybody's a sinner. We're full of sin. That's the way we were born. And God punishes sinners, and sinners go to hell. And there's nothing you can do. You can't pray hard enough. You can't donate enough money. You can't donate enough time. You can't save enough people, help enough people. None of that matters, because God doesn't care about your works. You're going to hell. If you have that without the gospel aspect and what that means, I want you to really just pause and take a moment. If you have not had that experience, God bless, thank you. Take the time to think about your life, knowing that no matter what, if I did the most amazing thing, or if I stole money, lied, broke things, deceived people, if I wanted something from someone, I would deliberately say, what do I need to, what is the thing I need to do to that? I would personalize, because I didn't care. I was going to hell anyway. Whether I saved that person from a burning building and helped them down, or whether I reached and grabbed their wallet and cell phone and pushed them back in and got what I wanted, those were the same to me. I was going to hell. There was nothing I could do. And at some point of mocking God and say, if I'm doing all this stuff, what are you going to do, God? Obviously, there's nothing. I see bad things at home. Why? My whole compass, again, the concept of what a father was, what love was, how you treat your wife. Again, at the very best of my life, I'm very happy I broke the cycle, meaning I didn't, but I broke many of the cycle, which is all I can hope for. But I lost my train of thought, and I'm going to move on. So again, it's difficult, as you can kind of hear and see, especially when I have fish jumping like that and birds flying all around. So I'm going to go to, again, this is where I say it's very convoluted, because I can't think of years. I have to think back to relevant points, meaning like at some points my parents got divorced. And this is another big thing, again, and it's just relevant about formative years and how important things are, because when my parents had one of their issues, they went to therapy. Okay, so now again, a young impressionable child, and this is what therapy is. Remember, you don't have the context of other and what it is. Again, this is what therapy is. So I go to a therapist because domestic violence, okay, and the therapist says, Steve, you can be honest with me and tell me what's going on with your dad. What, you know, and I tell them, and I'm just going to say, I tell them A, B, and C, and D, because I did 4 fingers. I'm Polish. A, B, C, and D. Then we have the day of counseling. I go home, and my dad beats me for A, B, C, and D. Meaning, she told him everything. And so, obviously, to me, a therapist is someone who tells everybody everything. So the logical thing is, if I don't want to get beat for A, B, C, and D, lie to the therapist. Don't say everything is great. So for years, again, I thought therapists were someone you go and say something to, and they'll just tell anybody and everything. It's you would get to go and say it to them and pay them for that. It sounds stupid now in hindsight, but for the majority of my years, that's what if anyone said, well, how come therapy and go this, I was like, are you serious? I can just tell you right here without having to go tell everybody and not pay anyone for it and all that. So it was very convoluted. And it was up until, unfortunately, the time around my divorce where I had to come face to face with it, because I know I needed what I thought, what therapy by definition is. I needed that, but I'm like, I can't, people keep saying, go to a therapist. Why? Do you guys not know like what I'm talking about here? Why am I going to go say that? And then they're going to tell my wife and tell whatever, like, it was just that moment of, again, so stupid as a 30-year-old man understanding what therapy is. Now I'm going to fast forward to my teens. My parents are in the process of getting divorced. Now, this is going to be brief, but my father, again, the way he weaponized family during divorce, made things bad. Very bad for me. The way I say it now is he set up my life in a minefield, meaning, I'm going to be very brief, but and when I say minefield, he would lie to people. I thank God I found, after 30 years of so many negative things towards him, found the ability to forgive him. But he would lie to people. He would tell, oh, Uncle so-and-so, Steve said this about you and your child, and he said this, and when you just things like that. So now, and that's for years. And I don't know, like, sometimes now if I ask my uncle about something, if they know my dad was lying, but I know they get upset. It's, again, navigating that all the time is just a minefield. So my parents are getting divorced. Therapy is that. And I get molested by my hockey coach. And this is where I say, looking back, I see the hand of God and the Spirit of God even in something horrible like that, because I don't remember much, but there's one specific thing I remember. And as I think back to all of this, it hit me like a slap in the face when I'll talk about this at the end, because I went on a trip with him. Again, he was my hockey coach. We were supposed to go to Florida, and we didn't make it because at some point, again, I don't remember how or why, it was something with a license plate, and something, I think he had 2 vehicles and switched the plates or something like that. And in Georgia, we got pulled over. He went to jail. This whole thing happened, but long story short is it looked like a trafficking thing getting set up that ended up falling through because of all of that. So when my parents actually divorced, it was a way for me to get away from that and my father and all of that. This is where things take another, again, where I talk about my trust in my mom and how subconscious it was again. So my mom got with someone and remarried, and I when the custody, all that settled out, I had no desire to see my father. My brother and sister did. So I went with my mom. Now, for clarity, it wasn't bad or anything, but again, it's one of those things where I sometimes I say my life would be an interesting book, or one of those movies of like, where just sometimes like there's no way that happened, or like there's no way something is going to happen now. Like that was the worst, but and this isn't that bad. But just again, with the context of all of this, I say it's not depressing. It doesn't depress me to think about it. It depresses me thinking about back then. One day, my stepfather and his friend are they say, "Do you want to go for a ride, go drive?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you know, cool, we're gonna do something." And you know, just again, I had no father figure up until that point, so I'm always subconsciously looking back. Bees or flying in my ear, was looking and seeking that, not knowing I could have found it in the Bible. But so I don't know why these flying around my hat. Maybe I stink really bad. So again, I'm trying to frame this in a way that doesn't make it sound as bad as it does, but I'm just gonna say it. So again, I'm thinking this is going to be a cool moment. We're going to bond and blah, blah, blah. And this is where I say, maybe, and I try to understand and think of something, a different perspective at least. And maybe this was supposed to be a bonding moment and went wrong, because what ended up happening was they were smoking marijuana. And I remember we parked somewhere, and I remember him turning around, and he's a big guy at the time. And for context, that was before my growth. I was a scrawny looking dude up until I hit my growth spurt, probably right around that time, like right after that. My point being, looks back, and for more context, he's a gun collector. He's a very boisterous person. He's that kind of person. So as a kid, that would have intimidated me, and it did. Looks back, he's like, "You want to smoke this?" And again, there's different aspects of it. First, I'd never smoked weed in my life. Second, I'm thinking that's a test where I'm supposed to, obviously I'm going to say no. And I said no. He said, "You sure?" Yeah. They look at each other kind of weird. Again, hindsight, I didn't get what was going on. And when I said no the third or fourth time, it's like, look at my face right now, okay? It's like, "You want to smoke weed?" Like, "Oh, come on, yeah, I know, no, you don't want to, yeah." No, I tell him no the third time, and "If you tell anybody about this, I'll kill you. Do you understand? If you tell anybody about this, I will kill you." Like a light switch. And again, to me, that was obviously, yeah, that's something exactly like, I got you, just like my dad would do. That's something exactly like my dad, "I got you." But again, that was the next relationship I went to in terms of a father figure. So fast forward to the Marine Corps. Even that, of course, they're doing the blowers now, so I'm going to try and talk a little bit louder over it. Well, now they're not, but so I went away to the Marine Corps. It was it was a little bit unique in that I went away to boot camp when I was 21, and actually spent my 22nd birthday at boot camp and graduated later. Meaning I was older than a lot of the people there who were, anyone over 19 was a rarity, so in fact, they used to call me the old man. And when you get to the history of the Marine Corps, they used to call me Archibald, because of the grand old man of the Marine Corps. And that was the first time. This is if you understand the Marines, and I hope you do, at least for this, so just this context, that was the first time I ever had a father figure in my life, meaning I had someone who wanted me to get better, someone I could emulate, and someone that between those two, between listening to them and emulating them, would move me in a positive direction. And the irony of it is, this is where, again, I laugh at it because I think it's funny, is the first time in my life I have that are people telling me, again, if you understand, drill instructors and Marine Corps boot camp, telling me how awful I am, how they hope they break me and send me home, I'm worthless, they're gonna, blah, 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 and they're gonna break, just all these things about that they say to recruits to mentally break you down. But I had heard all that, but there was not the positive aspect underneath that, the structure. And it was wild to me, and I loved it, and I embraced it. So that was for the first time in my life when I started to understand I'm accountable. Again, this is not even God or religious. The screen went off. But being accountable for something other than myself, what I wanted, my desire, how much it cost me, and what I had to do to get it. For the first time, again, as a 20, at that point 22 going forward, I lie and say 6 years, but it's 5 years and 11 months in the Marines. And that like I say, I learned to walk before I learned to crawl, and those were my formative years that I never had, teaching me responsibility, cause and effect, self-awareness, reflection. My actions have consequences, and sometimes for others. Again, so stupid. It sounds, it was a godless, hedonistic, thoughtless, vapid life that I was living. A perpetual man-child. And it didn't get much better after. Again, it's not that I got good after the Marines, because now I was in a bad position, because the Marine Corps is not the way you want to structure your life outside of the Marine Corps. It's a microcosm, meaning it's only really good to be a really, 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 really good Marine in either the situation where you are a Marine or where the circumstances that dictate whatever are the same as a Marine. So dealing with 10 to 30 Marines in my squad, platoon, unit, whatever, is different than dealing with 3 kids and 10 family members. But I didn't really recognize that, and I'm still navigating that. Part of the thing, I always laugh, the interesting thing, I don't say treat people as you want to be treated. I say find out how that person wants to be treated and treat them like that. Because if I treated you like I wanted to be treated, you would be upset. And I don't mean that negatively towards you, but I was literally talking with my sister, a friend Michelle, and my aunt about the fact of this, because most people don't like it if for example, if I was supposed to do something and didn't, if someone comes up and says, why didn't you do that, Steve? Why didn't you call me? How come you didn't show up? And maybe not with that tone, but you know, they say, hey Steve, you were supposed to be there to help me on Thursday. What happened? They say most people don't like that. They don't like being asked how, why, when, the accusatory questions. I like that for mainly 2 reasons. A, I can say, oh my gosh, I did forget. I get the chance to then acknowledge that I forgot and apologize, but then then handle it and remedy it, as opposed to someone not saying it and letting that linger. I want them to address it with me, whereas most people seem to take offense to those kinds of things. They take it offensive, personal, they get defensive, however you want to say that. So I don't need to be treated. That was been the biggest wake-up call when I, sometime, again, in my 40s, realizing I've been treating everybody like I want to be treated, and I want to be treated different than the majority of people. And that's my fault for not recognizing it. There may be fault in some people for not saying, Steve, oh, do maybe this or that, but I always say the onus is on me to be understood, not on the person to understand me. If I want them to, I should go to the lengths I need to make them understand. Maybe not the one I want to do, maybe not to say it the way I want to say it, and the action I want to act on, but if my job or my goal is to do that, that's my goal. So I get married in the Marines. Now, a little bit before that, a little bit of context again, my first deployment was in 2004. We were on a Navy ship because of the unit I was on. And again, to make this as quick as possible, the tsunami in Indonesia in that area hit. It would have been, I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was Christmas Eve or the day before Christmas Eve. And we were from here to, I don't know if you can see in the camera, but we'll just say, well, I'm gonna say a mile off in the distance. We're looking at Guam from the ship. We're about to get liberty for days, and we get word that we're gonna go into Indonesia instead and do humanitarian aid. So that's what we do. But we still go into Guam, but we just, instead of having days of liberty, we loaded up water, food, and wood and stuff, medical and stuff, and headed right out. Now, remember my experience with God up to this point. Now, I lost Marines, and that bothers me. And it took me a lot of time to navigate that, but I'm actually going to wait a moment because of that blower. I think I'm just going to talk over it, and I apologize because I think they're going to be going all the way around, so it's not going to end anytime soon, and I'd rather end this video before waiting for them. But, so, for about the 2 weeks I was there, me and my buddy folks, we did humanitarian aid. Nothing wrong with that. In fact, I say it's the best experience. My top 3 experiences were becoming a Marine, my daughters, and I would say a 4th now, and I'll say that in a moment, then what happened in Indonesia, and now finding Jesus. But it was hard for me to have a bad day. It's hard for me not to be humble. It's hard for me to say, man, today really stinks, looking back to what happened in Indonesia and what I saw. And specifically, I remember on the helicopter going up and seeing what I saw. You know, again, move bodies, helping people. That was not, and again, for specific context, the Marine Corps taught me, like I say, I lost Marines, so I don't remember exactly where I was, but my ultimate point is, I know what that was. I just don't know where I was. So I was, I don't know if desensitized, yes it is, but so they train you as a Marine for when you mess up, you got those 2 guys killed, so now you're 2 Marines down, or you got him killed because you moved, now you got to carry him because he's injured or hurt or whatever, and so on. So I never thought I would not have my Marines die, but I was not trained to go and move kids, bodies, deal with that. That's something that was a shock to my system. Now, to go forward for one moment, that didn't actually start to manifest really for me until I had my first daughter and had to think, what would I have done? Wow. So, but now what I'm getting at is that washed any questions. Like, I don't know if I think I didn't believe in God because, again, I lived a godless life. Like I say, like I didn't believe my actions had consequence. I didn't fear God because he didn't exist. Now I went to believing, you know what, if there is a God, and I only say this because I want to share with you. I cringe. I need to say a prayer to think about the things I said, but I cursed God. I attacked God. I scorned God. I scorned people who believed in God because, you know, again, the basic thing was, and again, what's I think is kind of ironic is it's one of the most basic questions most Christians suffer, or most non-believers suffer from, is how could God let this happen? And I'm not going to go into that here, but that's where I was at that time. So I was angry and resentful. I almost started believing in God just so I could curse him and spite him. So again, it's a fascinating aspect of almost believing in God for the worst imagined, just to be able to flaunt my superiority. Again, it is so weird and twisted. And my second deployment, I came home, and this is just one of those moments where, again, I say it's the Holy Spirit that I didn't recognize. And long story short, I was a rude jerk to everybody who was not in my unit, meaning my family, my wife, her family, people, anyone. My overall philosophy was I lost Marines on this tour. I lost a 19-year-old Marine. Whatever your problems are, you're a lot, like, I don't care. And that attitude is not wrong per se, because it's kind of it's the minimalist attitude I have about the tsunami, where I can look back. Now, the point is, if someone lost their job, I remember someone had a tire go flat on their way to work, and I didn't care. Not only did I not care, why would you even tell, that's a dude, change your tires, so what? That was me at the time. They could get fired for that, their dock pay, they have to pay now for a new tire, coach, whatever. None of that mattered, because you didn't have to deal with what I did. I was thoughtless and selfish like that, like I say, continuously. But the Holy Spirit kicked me in the butt, because again, just one day, I don't know what it was. I just realized, like, those are significant things to people. They know someone who's sick. They may have just got laid off from their job, something. Again, those are not nothings. But to me, they were, and I would just easily dismiss that, and that was a big wake-up call for me. I was not a good husband. Now, this is going to sound convoluted, so I hope this makes sense. I did not pick a godly wife, because I was not godly. Why would I? In a way. I don't mean that towards her. I mean that as a slight against myself. So there is blame on both sides, meaning, half and half, I'll say. I take the fault because It was my life. But the blame was on... I'm glad that actually happened, because it gave me a chance to kind of rethink about what I was going to say. I don't mean this... This is going to sound, again, convoluted, but in terms of blame, she has more blame. She wanted to do things, and I was led astray by them. But that... And what I'm saying is, so while I would say there's more blame on her behalf, what I will say is it's 100% my fault for allowing what happened to happen, regardless of who and what was pulling me in the wrong direction. I was like, yeah, I'll go there, and not, instead of saying no. So I was not a good husband, even in light of that, but I thought I was. Again, it's very interesting to me anyway. Now, I'm a skeptic and a confrontationalist. The confrontationalist is a whole nother episode. I'll talk about it at some point. Skeptical, you know what that is. My point being, again, I don't know how to trust unconditionally, so I'm skeptical of everything. I started to approach religion and think about it, and again, so when I approach something, if I want to engage, learn about it, I listen to it, but then I also listen to the things skeptical of it, against it, anti it, whatever, because I want to hear the arguments. I was bitter at God, trying to make sense of it, and hearing these skeptics, and and at that point, I was only approaching Christianity. I was only approaching Christianity confrontationally and negatively, not to understand it, to combat it, I guess, if that makes sense. So at that point, everything I learned about Christianity, like I say, was from Taoists, from atheists, from debates where they were getting challenged, things like that. So then things got worse, because in that marriage, things started to really fall apart. My life, the structure, the foundations of my life were built on sin and thoughtlessness, and they couldn't hold for long and started to collapse. It first started when my mom and dad both got cancer, lung cancer, around the same-ish time. My dad actually got it, a little bit before. And at that time, my divorce started to start. And I'm trying to, again, it's not hard. It's hard to, like so many things, pull them together and stay focused, because they want to go in different directions. This next part is all within a year and a half. This is why it gets really hard. No, it will in a point. I'm starting in it. So my dad got lung cancer. I tried to make amends with him, but I didn't. I was trying to make him forgive me, trying to make him earn my forgiveness in hindsight. I didn't know how to forgive at that time. I didn't know about God and Jesus. We had a big falling out. I was still married at that time. My mom got lung cancer, and I did a lot of talking with her about my father, because I didn't understand how she didn't hate him, resent him. I know what he did to you, and less. I know less of what he did to you, Mom. And, so blah, blah, blah. And I spent a lot of time, again, my mom was Roman Catholic. It's so ironic how much I loathe and despise it, but her faith was from that. And she was telling me godly things that I didn't want to hear, about how I need to forgive and he that. And she's slowly dying of cancer while I'm navigating this thing with my dad. So the wife at the time is pregnant. Long story short, so my GoPro overheated. But I think I know where I was. My ultimate point is, I had to go for 9 months, estranged from my ex, living in the same house until she left, then her in her own place, and I have 2 children, single, trying to navigate the fact that I need to develop a relationship with this baby that may end up not even being mine. So I need to invest not enough to be decimated if that happens, but enough to, this sounds different now, because I know after I got a test, she's mine, but my point is, I didn't know that, and I guess let's do that. It's almost an impossible thing, preparing for a kid under that circumstance. It seems fake, or again, like I never had to do that with any kid. Like, consider that, like, what am I going to do if? And that was hard. That's, again, this is coming all, so this is all from the time of November, we'll say October 2015 to my mom passed January 30th, 2016. So my ex leaves the day after Christmas. I had to drop out of high school. I was going to college at the time with my GI Bill. I had to drop out. My mom's dying of cancer. My dad's dealing with this. I started to drink a lot. My mom, it was quite the 1-2 punch. A little bit over a month. My ex left me, wife at the time. My mom dies January 30th. And I feel bad. But as I talk about all this, I understand why I'm going to say what I'm about to say. I don't remember so much. It was such a blur. I don't know what I processed and how. There's so many negative things I need to say about that experience. But again, it was traumatizing. And it culminated in, again, at that time, no concept of God and forgiveness. No, and I think people want to hear things like I want them to be said. So at my mom's funeral, at her eulogy, I said what in my brain and my thoughts and what I thought were my words were in essence saying, my mom taught me that I was selfish because my dad used to try to help people. And this is kind of in essence what I did say. I said, my dad would try to help people by doing things, meaning if my car broke down, if my sink had a leak, if something like that, my dad would always be there for you. Now, my dad wasn't the most emotionally supportive person. So what my mom taught me is I can't, for example, if my mom's car broke, pipe broke, roof leaked, wall, something, whatever, she couldn't call me to fix it. She could call my dad. And my dad would love to do that because that's how he expressed himself. Because he couldn't be the person that my mom would call when she's having a bad day, because that's not him. That's not how he would support you. He would support you with the way he knew how. And I was selfish my entire life thinking my dad is thoughtless because he's not doing how I would do it, how I want it. And my mom made me realize that. Now, so what I, in essence, thought I was doing was apologizing and in front of everybody at my mom's funeral saying, I was wrong about my dad, I'm sorry. And my mom is such a great person. She made me realize that after so long of not having a relationship with my dad, she slapped me in the face and humbled me, made me realize again how thoughtless I was. Now again, so I leave the funeral and I'm not really processing things, get home, and the next day, again, shock, right? Shock is generally when two aspects. You don't know what's happening, but the reason is it's something so outside of what you can fathom happening that your brain is catching up, and sometimes it takes a long time, sometimes shorter, whatever, but that's shock. You're in an accident and all of a sudden you're looking up at the sky. I don't remember looking up. Why am I looking up at the sky? And why does my back, that's shock. All of a sudden, why am I here? Oh my God. Trying to figure out the shock. Those are shocks. So I'm just thinking, I felt so good. I felt so happy. I thought in front of everybody, I said I was such a jerk to my father for so long and I was ungrateful and he was right. And I hope everyone can hear that. What everybody heard was me bashing my father, talking about how for years he was mean to me. And when that filtered through, it was the only thing I knew how to say to people, and I didn't say this, but did you hear what I said? And again, I went to several people and said, read this, what do you think? And those people were like, oh, that is so nice, that is thoughtful. You know, not, why do you hate your dad so much? Like, oh, why do you say this about your dad? Remove this part. Or, dude, what does this part mean? It sounds like you, again, so shock. I didn't know what to do. And I was already dealing with too much. And I shut down mentally from that point. It was this slow, steady decline of that situation. Because I had people tell me, again, look me in the face and laugh me as I can't drink water. And say, again, that because I would say, why are you upset? And they say, what you said to Dad. I was like, I thought I said this. And I had, meaning, I thought I said, thank you, I'm sorry, I was wrong, and blah, blah, blah. And my dad was right, and he was better than me for doing what he thought, blah, blah. And they say, Steve, I know you. That's not why you did that. So these people thought of me that I am the kind of person who will go to my mom's funeral and say, I can bash my dad. Now, what's scary is they're not wrong. And I'm thinking of this literally in the moment, meaning if my dad may have died 5 years before that, 10 years, I may have done that. So again, it's just thinking that is literally hitting me in the moment that they're wrong. They are wrong. But I try to take time to always humanize people, give them the benefit of the doubt, find their perspective. And going through my mom's divorce, a lot of people were resentful because, again, I was dealing with divorce, trying to navigate school, the house, my kids, my pregnant wife. And they're like, you need to come do more for your mom. So again, and I'm not saying, my point is, even back at that time, I'm trying to think like, I don't think they're right, but I understand where they don't know everything that's going on with me. So I understand where they're coming from, even though they're wrong. And I wish that would have been reciprocated back onto me. Dealing with alcoholism, I ended up foreclosing on my house and losing it. And I lost friends in all of that was politics and Trump. I'm a Trump supporter. I'm going to be voting for Trump. And so in case you don't know, what that meant for a lot of people is overnight, people who I was friends with, growing up with, people whose mother knew my mom, and that's how long we've known each other, since we were babies and couldn't talk. We were next to each other in cribs, blah, 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 baby talking to each other. It went from that to overnight, you're racist and don't like Mexicans and all this, because I voted for Trump, which just blew me away. The Mexican guy who I loved all my life and miss to this day and love, because I checked a box he didn't. I didn't like him because he's Mexican. One of those moments, I don't know what to say to that. Like, I had someone who was living in my home with me because they had an issue where they were going to be homeless with their child. So I let them come and live with me. And I told them, please don't pay me. They forced rent on me that I didn't want. That was so they were there for years. I would watch their daughter while they went to parties, while they went to hang out. They trusted me with my kids. I helped them move out of my place into their new place. A week later, I messaged them, hey, you want to come to my daughter's birthday party in a couple weeks? They messaged me, I don't associate with racists. He's black. His child is black. I'm like, you associated with racists. You left your child with a racist. And as soon as you move out, you don't need me anymore. I helped you. I hurt my back moving your couch up your stairs and was down for weeks. And as I'm texting you with my sore back, you're telling me I'm racist and you don't want anything to do with me. And it shocked me again. All I think I said was okay. I don't know what to say to that. And I was looking for the truth. I hear in so many confessional or testimonial videos, people are looking for the truth. Now, I was looking for the truth and I knew it wasn't God. I knew it wasn't Jesus. I knew it wasn't Christianity. All my life, I knew that. That is the biggest thing in all this. It's just fascinating as I started to read the Bible. I'm not in the New Testament yet. I'm only getting New Testament from videos or the things where I'd say I listen to apologist videos and debate videos where they'll reference it. I go to church on Sundays and they'll reference it. And I'm sitting here sometimes and I'm reading through the Old Testament And I'm saying, like, that's in the Old Testament. That sounds like something they said, and I'll go look it up. And like, and then I'm going to stop here because I think this is the end, because that's how I came to Christianity. But what I started realizing when I was reading the Bible, I was like, that's what a father should be. That's what a father because I think I cut myself off saying this. I was not really taught how to be. I'm very lucky I didn't become my dad, okay? But I didn't know how to be not my dad. I knew not what to do, meaning don't hit my wife, don't yell at my kids, don't drink and beat everybody up. But now what do I do? What do I do? And I never knew and never cared. That is what, like looking back, I'm like, man, if I would have read this and thinking, my main challenge is for me, if I could time travel back and put a mask on and talk to me at 16, 10, at 20, 25, 30, 35, when I was rejecting all that, what would it have been that made me think? And I found a couple ways. That's what's fascinating to me, where at certain points, if I hear something and knowing the way my brain, again, not knowing me now, knowing, man, I remember what I would have said, what I would have thought, how that would have oh man, and I'm getting that. And I want to pass that on to other people. That is how I came to Christianity. And I don't have a church yet. I'm struggling. I don't have anybody to talk to consistently. I don't have generally anybody to offer criticisms or feedback or listen to mine. Or again, maybe I think it says this and it's saying this. Or again, the Bible is so layered where sometimes I'm thinking, man, I think it's saying this. And I'll talk to them and they're like, yeah, it is, but it's also saying this. And I'm like, oh, yeah, again, something dumb, but you don't know what you don't know. And I always say I can fill libraries with what I don't know. So that's what I want to seek in others. And again, I don't only seek people saying you're right. And again, I, as just a skeptic and a confrontationalist, the content I love is watching. There's different facets of watching a Christian debate an atheist, but again, so now I'm watching Christians debate other Christians, and even that blows me away because the context is so different, where if I'm arguing with an atheist or a Muslim, if I use the Bible as a reference, that's called into question because of the lack of belief from these parties. But now if I'm debating with two Christians and I'm referencing that Bible verse, it's not called into question because I'm automatically assuming, oh, here we go. But no, then they're saying, yeah, I agree, and let's move. But I view it differently, or let's move on to this point. Again, it's fascinating how different that can be, watching different perspectives interact with each other. I was watching a video on progressive Christianity versus traditional or conservative Christianity, which is what an interesting video in and of itself. I'm learning so much, but I am thankful that I have found Jesus, and that Jesus is so, I'm only reading in the Old Testament. And one thing that I adore, love, and wish I could emulate to one fraction of a degree that God does is being slow to anger. Because again, if God was not slow to anger, I wouldn't have a chance. I would have been, again, the first time I cursed God, if he was not slow to anger, that would have been the end. And he, again, the things I have done, there are things I have done that the people I've done them to, and the things I've done affected, even if I wasn't doing it directly to them, they will not ever forgive me. I couldn't come to them and say, look, I'm a Christian today, and can you forgive me? They say, do you know what you did? No. I've had to either block out thinking of you for years, or deal with the fact that what you did has affected me for so long that my whole life has changed in a way I didn't want because of you. And now because you did something, you think I'm going to forgive you? Get out of here. And I understand that. I would be foolish to say, well, I found Jesus though, and he's forgiving me, and I've forgiven other people who have done worse to me than what I've done to you. That would be selfish, thoughtless. That would have been the old me that I would have said, because yeah, it makes sense. But again, knowing what forgiveness is, it's not something you just go and seek from others or expect. That's selfish, expecting it from others. But it's selfless to literally try to find reasons and ways to forgive people or to foster forgiveness in them. Forgiveness for me was what realizing Jesus's capacity to forgive is what ultimately changed me. And I'm so thankful to God and Jesus for that. And I say that every day in so many ways, and in my prayers, Thank you, God. Thank you for being so slow to anger and giving someone like me a chance. And for the rest of you, I hope you're doing well. Take care of yourselves. Take care of the ones. Go easy and go out and enjoy the weather. I'll say a prayer for you.